Why, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here for this new video. In this one, I put this video together hoping for it to be a bit of like an artist statement, in the sense that I'm hoping that this video summarizes why I love my research so much and why death history is so important to me, and I think very underrated in the discipline of history. So today I want to talk about why death is one of the greatest ways to understand a society. And when we say understand a society, we also mean understand a certain people at a place in time in the past. And so that's what I'm going to address today in the form of 7 lessons that I've learned in studying death as a historical focus and as a point of reference from which to learn about a certain society at a given time and given place. If you are new here, my name is Amélie. I am an MA student at McGill in history. I also work in marketing. I co-own a small business, and on this channel we like to talk about my research in death history, but also productivity, academia, juggling a bunch of different things at the same time. So if any of this is of interest to you, don't forget to subscribe down below, leave a like, leave me a comment, and also follow me on all of my social media, which is in the description down below. Without further ado, let's go straight into the topic of today, which is why is death one of the best ways to understand a society in 7 lessons. So I actually think that I have a bit of an unfair advantage when it comes to understanding history. Whenever I want to understand a certain group of people at a certain place in time, I don't start with its leaders or its wars or its laws. I start with its dead. And I know that that could sound sort of morbid. When I tell people that I'm a death historian, they usually assume that I'm interested in the macabre. Skeletons, coffins, ghost stories, love all that stuff. Victorian mourning jewelry. Don't get me wrong, I love Victorian mourning jewelry, but that's not really what I'm studying. What I study is people, and death just happens to be the moment when people become the most honest, because death has this incredible way of stripping away appearances. When somebody dies, the society around that person suddenly has to answer questions that they normally try to avoid entirely. Who deserves dignity? Who deserves to be remembered? Who belongs? Who doesn't? What is a good death? What is a bad death? And every single one of these questions reveals something much bigger than death itself. It reveals what a society believes about life. And today, I want to show you 7 things that death can teach us about a civilization. And by the end, I really hope you'll never look at a cemetery the same way again. Lesson 1. Death teaches us what the society values. Now imagine you know absolutely nothing about ancient Egypt. No history books, no documentaries, no pyramids. Then somebody drops you in the middle of the Valley of the Kings. Immediately, you would realize something quite extraordinary. These people invested unimaginable amounts of labor for people who are already dead. Entire industries revolved around preparing someone for the afterlife. Mummification, tombs, funerary texts, offerings, architecture that took decades to complete. And you do not spend that much energy on something that you don't think is important. And the archaeologist Barry Kemp once remarked that Egypt was in many ways a civilization obsessed with eternity. And he's right. Death was not the opposite of life. It was life continuing. And the same sort of thing happens everywhere. If medieval Europeans desperately wanted to be buried near saints, if 19th century Americans spent fortunes on elaborate mourning rituals, if modern North Americans spend billions trying to preserve youth, these are not random trends, they are value systems. And as Philippe Ariès famously argued, every age develops its own attitude towards death, and those attitudes reveal the mentality of an era better than almost anything else. Because death is not separate from culture, but it is in many ways culture distilled. Lesson 2 is that death teaches us who counts as fully human. Now this one can be very uncomfortable because every society obviously claims to value human life, but death reveals whether it actually does. One of the first things that historians notice is that not everyone receives the same funeral. Some people receive monuments in public parks, some are buried in mass graves, some become martyrs, others simply disappear. And the historian Thomas Laqueur writes that the dead make social worlds. And I think he's exactly right in saying that, because deciding on how to treat the dead is really deciding who mattered while they were alive. This is something that I encounter constantly in my own research. I study Black women in death care in the Atlantic world, and one of the recurrent questions that I face is who was considered worthy of mourning and what and under which circumstances. Under slavery, for example, enslaved people were often denied the opportunity or the resources to perform proper funerary rituals for their loved ones. Bodies could be discarded, families separated, rituals interrupted, and this was in many ways a denial of humanity itself. And conversely, when enslaved communities insisted on caring for their dead, sometimes in secret, they were not just grieving, they were making a political statement, and they were and still are in many ways insisting that these lives mattered. Lesson 3 is that death teaches us how communities are built. One thing that surprised me when I began studying funeral history is that funerals are not really about the dead. They're actually about the survivors, about the living. Anthropologist Robert Hertz argued over a century ago that death is never simply an individual event. Anthropologist Robert Hertz argued over a century ago that death is never simply an individual event. It is a crisis for the entire community. It's rupture. One person dies and suddenly everyone has work to do. One person has to cook, one digs the grave, somebody sings, somebody comforts the widow, somebody tells stories, people cry, someone organizes. Death creates community, or it reveals its absence. And when I study 19th century Black funeral directors like Henrietta Dutier, I'm not just studying someone who buried bodies. I'm studying someone who sat at the intersection of church life, mutual aid, abolitionism, philanthropy, business, neighborhood relationships, because death care was not peripheral, it was community infrastructure. Lesson 4 is that death teaches us how power works. Here's something that I love asking my students. Who decide how and where you're actually buried? It sounds like a simple question, and you might think about it like, well, it's, the survivors, whoever I leave behind. But if you think about it, your choice in location, ceremony, monument, wording, and even beyond that, who gets a state funeral, who gets an unknown grave, who gets moved decades later, those are all essential questions about who has the power to decide or to arbitrate where burials happen and where death can take place, or, the after death can take place. Historians Catherine Verdery argued that dead bodies continue to have political lives. And governments know this. That's why revolutions tear down statues. That's why dictators have huge mausoleums built for themselves. That's why nations create tombs of unknown soldiers. The dead never ever stop being political. They are simply recruited by the living. Lesson number 5 is that death teaches us what people fear. Every culture fears death, but not in the same way. Many medieval Europeans feared dying without confession. Victorians feared the bad death. Today, I think we mostly fear death itself. Modern societies have obviously gradually hidden death away from everyday life. People die in hospitals, bodies disappear behind professional doors. Children rarely encounter death naturally. Death has become almost invisible, and that is remarkable because it's the one thing that every human being will experience. And yet we've become experts at pretending it's not happening. This tells us a lot about what we fear. It tells us something very profound about our modern societies, not just how we die, but how we cope. Lesson 6 is that death teaches us how memory is made. For the most part, when we study history, we study dead people. And here's my favorite paradox. History is not made by the past, it's made by the present. It's a narrative. Every generation decides which dead deserve remembering. People get statues, some get holidays, some get museums, and others simply disappear. And one of the reasons that I became so fascinated with Henrietta Dutier is because almost nobody remembers her, at least not as much as I think they definitely should, but she was America's first female funeral homeowner. She was most likely involved in the Underground Railroad. She was a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, a community leader, and yet when I visited Philadelphia, there was almost nothing. No museum, no historical marker, just a modern condo where her funeral home once stood. And history is not just about remembering, it is also quite a lot about forgetting. And sometimes what a society chooses not to commemorate tells us just as much as what it does. And finally, lesson 7, death teaches us how to read history. I think this is why I became a death historian, not because I am fascinated by death itself, although I am, but because death literally connects everything. Religion, economics, gender, architecture, medicine, law, politics, emotion, migration, race, family. You can't study death without accidentally studying everything else. The human world is inconceivable without the dead. And I would go one step further, that history is inconceivable without the dead. They built our cities, they founded our institutions, they created our traditions, they started our wars, they inspired our revolutions, and they are still shaping the way that we think today. The cemetery is at the end of history. It's one of its greatest archives. So to conclude, I often get asked why I chose to specialize in death history, and the answer is actually quite simple. Death forces honesty. A society can lie about equality, but death reveals who receives dignity. A society can lie about religion, but death reveals what people truly believe happens after life. A society can lie about community, but death reveals who actually shows up. It can lie about justice. Death reveals who gets remembered. Death, in other words, is, I think, where societies accidentally tell the truth about themselves. And I think that's why I've fallen so deeply in love with studying it. Not because I spend my days thinking about death, although I kind of do, but because I spend my days trying to understand what it means to be human and what it has meant historically, and I have not yet found a better place to look than in death. So that was our 7 lessons in why death is one of the best ways to understand a society. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, leave a coffin or a tombstone emoji down below in the comments. If you would like to see more from me, don't forget to subscribe. Come hang out on my Instagram where I post a lot of more short form content. It's all in the description below. Thank you so much for watching again. Any thoughts you have about the video, I would love to read them. Let me know in the comments, and I look very much forward to see you in my next video. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves and have a good one.